On March 5th, 2013, Hugo Chavez died of cancer. This event is going to radically shift the balance of power in Latin America and the Caribbean, but not for the reasons that you're being told by the mainstream media. During his 14 years as president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez was a highly controversial figure. However, most of this controversy was intentionally distorted and was designed to distract from the real geopolitical stakes in that region. The official line used by the mainstream media and the U.S. government to smear Chavez has been to attack his social programs and other domestic policies. However, when viewed in context, it should be obvious that this was not the real reason his administration has been targeted so many times over the years. Venezuela holds the 7th largest oil reserves in the world, by far the largest supplier in Latin America. In fact, Venezuela's reserves are more than twice the size of the 2nd largest Latin American producer, which is Mexico. This makes the country a key pivot point for that region. From the very beginning of his administration, Hugo Chavez was antagonistic with U.S. oil companies. Over time, he began kicking them out of the country, in the end moving towards full nationalization of all Venezuelan oil fields. This obviously made him some powerful enemies. In 2002, the U.S. backed a military coup attempt on Chavez. Funding for the coup was routed through a front organization called the National Endowment for Democracy, a so-called non-profit organization fully funded by the U.S. government. The National Endowment for Democracy, alongside an array of other pseudo-nonprofit foundations, such as the International Republic Institute and the International Foundation for Election Systems, have been used extensively throughout the world to fund opposition to governments which are uncooperative to U.S. interests. Front groups are used to shield the U.S. from the political fallout that occurs when direct CIA intervention is discovered. Direct interventions can lead to blowback, as was the case in the CIA-backed coup against the democratically elected Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953. Incidentally, Mossadegh was taken out for the same reason. He had nationalized Iran's oil. The 2002 coup against Chavez failed due to the fact that he had very strong public support. There was a mass uprising by the Venezuelan people, and the military was forced to release him. Rather than being cowed by these events, Chavez became even more outspoken against U.S. foreign policy, particularly the U.S. wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He also began organizing a bloc of Latin American and Caribbean countries called the Bolivarian Alliance for the Americas. This alliance was working to pull off the dollar for their trade and begin using a currency called the sucre to replace it. Venezuela had also signed a number of key oil deals with China. Now, in order to understand the geopolitical importance of these events, one must understand the petrodollar. Oil is only sold in global markets in dollars. This is an arrangement that was established by Nixon in 1973, right after he ended the gold standard. This arrangement forces every oil-importing government in the world to maintain a reserve of U.S. dollars at all times, which in turn guarantees demand for the dollar, and therefore maintains the value of the dollar. Venezuela's move to pull multiple countries off of the dollar was a direct threat to U.S. financial interests. This is the real reason the U.S. government and the mainstream media work so hard to portray Chavez as public enemy number one in Latin America. For more information on the petrodollar and its global implications, please watch The Road to World War III. Now, the mainstream media has done a pretty good job of convincing most Americans that U.S. opposition to Chavez was derived from his leftist social policies, and therefore the debate then degrades into a mudslinging fest between the left and the right. This only works because most of the American people haven't done their due diligence, and are therefore completely unaware of the real stakes in this global chess game that's unfolding right now. Neither the U.S. government or the mainstream media cares about whether a nation is leftist or oppressive. All they care about is whether that country is cooperative with U.S. interest. This is evident in the fact that countries like China and Bahrain are given a free ride by the mainstream media and U.S. politicians, in spite of the clear human rights violations that are being committed by these countries. Furthermore, the U.S. government is far more dangerous and destructive than any Latin American country that has ever existed or will ever exist. It is completely incoherent to cheer the death of a democratically elected leader of a small South American country who had a voter approval rating that was higher than that of Obama and just slightly less than the U.S. president and the Congress combined. It's none of America's business who Venezuela elects, and it's especially absurd to hear political pundits meddling in their affairs when the U.S. itself is sliding into an overt police state. American criticisms of the Venezuelan government aren't even the pot calling the kettle black. It's a freaking coal mine calling the kettle black. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel, Storm Clouds Gathering, here on YouTube. For bonus content, be sure to follow our Facebook page, facebook.com/stormcloudsgathering, Twitter @collapseupdates, and of course our website, stormcloudsgathering.com.